everybody. How you doing today?
Good.
I'm pretty sure I don't need a microphone. You can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm pretty used to being in front of a group, so I tend to speak a little bit loudly. And I'm really impressed with you guys sitting in the front row. Because, you know, you put a class and everyone wants to sit in the back row. So thanks for sitting in the front row. I appreciate it. So everybody in here wants to learn about careers in cybersecurity? You all want to be hackers? No. Glad to hear that.
I mean,
So you know who's telling you what you're going to hear. My name is Deborah Moses. I am the CEO of a company called Veris Associates, also known as VerisVisalign. We are from the Philadelphia area, and we service accounts all over the country and all over the world. We are a Microsoft partner, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the company, but I've had the company for 20 years. It'll be 20 years in April. And in 2012, I acquired the company that I used to work for way back when. So I've been around for a while. I'm not going to tell you how many years because that would make me really old. But I've been around a while. I raised kids, 4 of you, over the years, 3 boys and a girl. So I get where you're coming from. I've been through the high school years 4 times. What is cybersecurity? In case anybody hasn't defined this for you, it's called computer security, cybersecurity, or information technology security. It's how we protect computer systems and networks from attack. So basically, there's a whole definition here, but that's basically what it is. It's how we in the industry prevent attacks to corporate and networking systems. So how do you know if you want to do this? A lot of times some of you were in here for Curtis's presentation. A lot of times you go to school for it. If you go to school for computers, if you go to college for computers, there's lots of different degrees. There's MIS degrees, management information systems. There's specific degrees with minors in security. It really depends on the school that you go to, what it's called. I know Curtis was talking about Penn State. That's where he went. Most of the state schools in this area, Bloomsburg, Kutztown, Penn State, Westchester, all the state-run schools, they all have careers in information sciences, and information security. And, even the classes you're taking now might help you to identify what you're interested in. I've talked to a lot of high school students who say, well, school doesn't interest me. Well, what about school does interest you, if anything? Is it art? Is it science? Is it math?
Does lunch count?
Lunch counts, sure. Maybe you're going to be the next gourmet chef. Who knows, right? But guess what? You need math and science for that too. Many people start in tech positions once they leave school. If you were in here earlier, Curtis mentioned a service desk analyst or a help desk analyst. That's where a lot of people start in IT, especially right out of school, because you don't know much yet. You don't really know about what IT takes yet. IT is more than just somebody having a problem and saying, hello, tech support, and trying to fix their desktop. There's a lot of different things across an organization that have to do with IT. And an IT, like a corporate America, name a big company for me. Think of a big company. Microsoft. Okay, well, they're a tech company, so they sort of don't count. PP&L. Okay, that's a great example because we all know them up here, right? PP&L has I haven't worked with them for about 5 years, but they probably have about 45 people minimum in IT, just in IT. And probably a handful of them, 3, 4, 5 maybe, work in security. So there's a lot of different jobs in IT. They're not all security related. And most people have to do some of those jobs before you get into security, because you really need to understand all of IT, not just one specific section, one island as we speak. There's a lot of different things in IT that you can do. Most people start as a service desk analyst or maybe a project coordinator or an entry-level engineer. If you went to school for computer sciences, regardless of what they call it in the school that you go to, and you end up taking like a Microsoft certification or the A+ that Curtis was talking about earlier, they are lead-in certifications. You need to learn more and more about IT and get some experience before you can really be a good security person. Typically, as your career progresses, you'll develop an interest in security and say to your manager, I really think I want to get into security. And then you can help a lot of companies, once you're in there and you're working, a lot of companies will have what's called a tuition reimbursement. And you can go take additional classes on them, you know, on the company's dollar, if it's related to your work. So there's a lot to the security space. Microsoft and other technologies, Google, Apple, the big guys, they have their own security features. So when you install Microsoft 365, there is a ton of security all built in, but guess what? It doesn't do anything for you if you don't push the right buttons and click on the right things. You have to set the security parameters that you want to see. So there are some defaults, obviously, but then there are some things that, unless you know about them, you don't know about them. So you have to go and do the research. Corporate systems, typically Microsoft and larger companies. Most large companies are using Microsoft 365. Some are still on Google and some other systems, but most are running Microsoft, at least on a desktop. Okay, so what kind of job levels are there? There's engineering, which is, you know, if you want to get into a security analyst, that's an engineering role. Management, people that run the security team in cybersecurity. Typically, they've come up through management or project management, and they've been, you know, promoted to manager of one of those teams. They have additional expertise. They have additional management expertise, and also you get that as you're working, right? You get some of that that experience. A CISO is somebody called a Chief Information Security Officer, and they're responsible for all of the security in the organization. So it's an executive level role. They're usually right up there with the Chief Information Officer, the CIO, Chief Information Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, the Chief Executive Officer, maybe a Chief Operational Officer. So these are some of the types of roles. Ethical hackers, that's kind of what everybody thinks they want to do when they want to get into security. I want to be a hacker. Anybody in here think you want to be a hacker? No. No? Okay. You already are an ethical hacker. Curtis is raising his hand. He was a speaker in the last session. There are a lot of day-to-day roles besides being an ethical hacker. I would suggest if you want to be a hacker, you be an ethical hacker, not an unethical hacker, by the way, because you might end up in jail if you try and do that. Information data security. This is an operational role. It's a day-to-day operational role. You'd be looking at specific areas of the company's systems. You might be monitoring for risky logins. There are ways that you do that within different security or operating systems. You might be looking at the company's data to make sure the data is safe and uncompromised. There are penetration testing roles. A penetration test is when you work from the outside of the system, trying to get in, trying to hack into the system to see where the loopholes are that you might be able to compromise. Does that make sense? Okay.
So it's pretty much testing your own software.
Correct. Correct. You're testing your own systems. It's not just necessarily, well, it is software, but it's sometimes it's the operating system too. You're testing the systems you're trying to get in. You're trying to figure out where there might be some vulnerabilities. You'll hear words like vulnerabilities, compromise, things like that a lot in security. There are lots of tricks. If you were in, some of you over here were in Curtis's session earlier, he was talking about some of the tricks to get in. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Application testing, and sometimes it's called, there's data loss prevention as well. That a lot of times is when you are really looking at the code in an application, the back end of the application, to see if there are vulnerabilities there and where you can get in. There, not too long ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, it was before COVID, there was an incident or a set of incidents where Dell had people building computers who were actually leaving a backdoor in the computer open when they were building the laptops. And a lot of companies got compromised because of it. And they, you know, a lot of this was rebuilt computers. Not every computer that's out there is new. You can buy rebuilt computers just like you can buy rebuilt phones. And when they rebuilt them, they had somebody in there who was not ethical and was leaving a vulnerability on the back end of the system so that it could be gotten into. And a lot of CEOs were hacked. I know that from professional experience. Data recovery professionals, there are people who, like, once you're compromised, how do you get your data back? There's lots of different ways you can be compromised. Did you ever hear ransomware? So there's ransomware attacks, there's, other hacking attacks, there's spoofing and cloning and all kinds of things. I heard somebody in the earlier session mention phishing. Was it you? Okay. A network security engineer. So this is, again, a day-to-day job ensuring that the design and the operation of the network is secure. And the network is different than just the software on the desktop. So there are different people that do different things. You might hear the word cryptographer. A cryptographer is someone who builds and deciphers encryption codes and algorithms. This is a pretty sophisticated job, and it's usually only a role in companies that really have to be careful with very highly sensitive data. You might find cryptographers in government agencies, you might find them in medical agencies. Where else, Curtis, will we find a cryptographer? Colleges, yeah. Anybody who has personal identifiable data. Police, fire, medical, those types of things. Right. A security awareness specialist. This is a relatively new role in the industry. You didn't really see these before, but this is someone who really ensures that the organization has an awareness for how to prevent security attacks. So there's a whole campaign or multiple campaigns throughout the year of awareness to send things out and say to people, maybe through the online university that the organization has, here's what to look for, here's what not to do. You've all been taught, I hope, to hover over a link that comes in an email before you click on it to make sure it's a real link. And, not to necessarily click on things that come to you, but maybe type them back into a browser to see if it's real. The security awareness specialist creates those kinds of campaigns and awareness education. Lots of different degrees, as I mentioned earlier. If you're looking for a degree in security, it's typically going to be a 4-year degree in some sort of management information systems with a specialty in security, a minor in security. There are some schools that have an actual degree in information security. It really depends on where you go and what they call it, as I mentioned earlier. Coupled with specific learning in cybersecurity, you can also get specialty certifications. So there are different certifications you can get depending on what you're looking to do. And they vary, and they're usually industry driven, which means they're not necessarily presented by a university. You might be able to go take them at the university, but they're usually after you get a degree, and then you want specialty learning. There's a specific type of professional called a CISSP, a Certified Information Security Systems Professional. That is a very tough cert to get. Are you a CISSP?
Not yet.
Not yet. See, not yet. Guy's been in the industry how many years?
Probably 3, I would say.
3 in security.
Well, I did malware mitigation for 14 years, so not that 7.
Okay, but how long have you been working on your CISSP? A year?
3 years.
3 years, okay. It's not an easy certification to get. There's lots of learning, and there's testing that has to be done that you have to pass. This is just a little bit about my company. I don't really have more to tell you about the learning paths right now. I'm happy to take questions because I know you didn't have a lot of time for questions in the last session. There are also things like project management and security operations center management and things like that in the management track that you can go after as well, if you don't necessarily want to be a pure techie. Did you have a question? Or were you just stretching? Okay. Questions? Yes, sir.
What led you to go into technology?
Oh, that's a tough question. I've always been interested in it. I ended up working in telecom, which is telephones, and and it led me to this, and then I ended up liking it. So it was part of another job that I was doing, but my degree is in business. So I thought I was going to be an English teacher, and then I switched my degree to business. So I've kind of been all over the map here, but for the last, more than 20 years, let's put it that way, for a while, because I started this business 20 years ago, and I was in business before that as a telecom and telecom project manager. I was almost always in management. I was never really a techie. I understand enough tech to be able to know when somebody isn't telling me the truth about tech, which is really what you need in management. Other questions? No
Good.
other questions?
Yeah, so.
Hello from
how-
Harrisburg. We have a question here.
Go for it.
Good.
So how can you tell which IT career is the right one for you out of like all of like the list?
That's a tough question. And from my experience, working with people who are technicians and technologists, I would say a lot of times it's a feeling. You start in as an entry level role, and then you get a feel for what you're good at, and you go from there. It's either I'm really good at the management piece of it. I'm a list maker. I think I should be in management, or I started in a tech space. Like my son started in as a developer in the tech space in college, and he was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore. So, he ended up going in a different direction. I think a lot of times, and for a lot of tech careers, it's trial and error. I don't know that it's not a real helpful answer, but that really is the reality of what happens a lot of times. I think you have to see what classes you like and what resonates with you, and then go down a path. And if you don't like it, be willing to change. You're nodding. Do you think that's correct?
Yes, definitely. I think, and sometimes you can set out on a path thinking that your skills are lining up with that, and then you learn along the way that, yeah, that's not exactly what I'm cut out for. And just like your son's.
Or maybe not what you're happy with, right?
Mhm.
I'm all about doing what makes you happy. Life's too short to not do what's going to make you happy and have fun with. So, I counsel people all the time. If something's resonating with you, go for it, because that's probably where you need to be.
Probably better to pick a direction and go for it and then find
And
out.
figure
rather
it out.
than Be paralyzed by all the decisions.
100%. You're 100% right. You have to pick a direction and go down a path and see if it works for you, and be willing to make a change if it's not working. There are a number of adults in the room. I'm going to make an assumption that we've all been to school, and probably most of us have been to college. How many of you changed your majors? The adults in the room, how many of you changed your major? Look around, guys. Look at the hands that are up. We've all changed our majors in college. We all started out trying to do one thing or thinking we wanted to do one thing, and then changed our majors. You're not going to know at 18 what you want to do for the rest of your life. Some of you will. I've met people who at 18 were like, I want to be a doctor. I'm going to go down this path. I'm going to go to med school. I'm going to do this. And they were blissfully happy. And other people have gone to school for things that didn't really make them happy in the first year or two, and they switched. There's nothing wrong with that. You got a lot of time to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. I was still reinventing myself at 45, so go figure, And I'm the CEO of a company now, so you pretty much, I tell people all the time, you're only limited by your imagination of what you can be and do. So, think about it. Other questions? Are there any other questions from the other sites? Harrisburg, any more?
I think we're good. Nobody's written up. One more. Go ahead.
Are there like any IT options if you don't go to college?
Absolutely. There are many training programs. There are some, you don't have to necessarily go to college full time, but there are night school programs. There are, I know of 2 programs in Philadelphia and the surrounding areas that are technical cohorts for like 16 weeks, where they teach you the ins and outs of building and taking apart a computer, and some stuff about JavaScript and .NET programming, and it gets you an intro to different parts of IT so that you can figure out what it is you like. I teach project management 1 day out of 4 weeks for those types of cohorts. So there are those types of things around. There are some of the colleges have like night school just for specific classes that you can take to see if you like something. So yeah, and if you want, there are some places who will hire you right out of high school and teach you. So it really depends. If you want to be in tech though, I strongly suggest that you go to at least a 2-year college and get some tech background and some actual schooling, because you're gonna get a better salary if you've got a degree coming out of school and you do an entry-level job, because you're going to know a little bit more. You might not have the experience, but if you have the degree, at least there's an assumption that you've learned something in those 4 years. Does that help? Did I answer your question?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, any other questions? Quiet group. All right, thank you very much for your attention, appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, I'll be around for a little while. Curtis is still here, so I think we can help you. This is me, if you want my contact information, I'm on LinkedIn, if you want to try and link in with me, that's all good. And I think you're gonna send this out to the teachers and
I will check into it, but yes.
I think I read from Cheryl that the presentations are gonna be sent to the adults that were coordinating.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thanks, everyone.